Alright folks, here we are back for one of our final episodes. This episode, we're going to work on the cloak. So this is the cloak that goes on the Silent King that he wears while he's on his throne. Now, for the most part on this build, we've worked in non-metallic metals. But for this piece, we're going to actually use a metallic here. So this has been sprayed with Vallejo army, or Vallejo plate mail, I believe is what it's called. And we're going to use a contrast method. Now this is going to be very similar to the contrast method you may have seen in Duncan Rhodes' Painting Academy, where he did his 200,000 subscriber kind of extravaganza where he painted the entire Silent King. So this is very similar to the way he's doing it. I'm using slightly different colors, but the technique is going to be very similar. So without any more to do, let's go ahead and get started. The base for our cloak here is going to be a mix of Frostheart and Aldari Emerald. So I'm going to get, and all of these paints have been thoroughly mixed, so I'm going to bring one brushful, two brushful of the blue contrast Frostheart. I'm going to clean out my brush here. Then I'm going to go ahead and get two brushfuls of Aldari Emerald here. And then I'm going to take my contrast medium and I'm going to make this very, very thin. I'm going to be shooting for something like a 3:1 ratio here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is actually picking it quite a bit, so I'm going to stop here at 5. And we're going to mix these in. So I'm just mixing this with my contrast medium here. I'm getting a very, very thin mix. And I'm going to apply this thin mix to my model here. So I'm just going to come in and we're going to start applying this in very thin layers. And you can see whenever you have a contrast paint that goes onto a metallic, it really just makes it look like this metallic is that color. And so we're going to just let it go where it may. I'm actually going to thin this just a hair more. I'm going to come in here with a bit more of our contrast medium. Here we go. And we're going to go ahead and pull this across the model. Now this is not quite the right brush for this either. I think one would much rather have a brush that offers a little more control. But in this case, we're just going to do the best we can and try and concentrate this into the folds here, where it should be the darkest. You can see I've mounted this on a toothpick. We're just gonna kind of hope it holds. This contrast paint should kind of naturally want to find its way down there. You can see this is just forming a really nice color on here. Kind of blue-green color, kind of like the ocean. Now, why did I choose to do this with a true metallic metal and these contrast paints, even though we've done the whole rest of the model in non-metallics? Well, I wanted this to really stand out, and I liked the techniques that Duncan Rhodes was showing. I thought they were very cool. They highlighted a new kind of paint that you can use. It was just interesting, so it's something fun and new. I know a lot of people have been interested in contrast paints, how to use them, what they're really good for, and I think this really highlights what contrast paints are excellent at. They're excellent for going over metallics and getting a metallic that is the color of your contrast paint. It just shades it in just perfectly. So I'm just going to continue to apply this mix here of contrasts through the inside of the cape. Oh, just to finish the thought, the other reason that I did this is that this is supposed to be a very otherworldly kind of object. It's supposed to be the fleeced skin of a star god, so one of the Satan. And I can't remember which Satan. There is a Satan that they particularly disliked, and I believe ultimately this was the Satan who met this particular fate. But I wanted this to be very unworldly. I wanted it to be very different from the rest of the model, since it is kind of this unique thing. Get these more smooth layers. So it's going to probably be a bit difficult to get these layers very smooth on here. Mostly because this brush doesn't really facilitate this. I'm just going to come in here. This is not really dry yet, and so I can still manipulate it just a tad. But I think at this point I am going to leave it be. So I'm going to come back onto this and fix these connection points. They're going to have some non-metallics in a moment, but here I believe I've gotten this into all of the folds. Oh, almost. Just checking to see any small places I might have missed. Just smooth all that down. Excellent, so that's drying up here. I am going to hasten it drying by getting out my blow dryer, because I'm going to catch this little area right there, because we have quite a few more steps to apply here before we're done. So here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you up now, and we're going to go ahead and grab the hairdryer. Alright, so I'm going to bring you back here. And now we've dried this out. So I'm going to deepen the folds here, and I want to have a transition from the deepest fold out. And it's going to be purple in these folds, and for that I'm going to use Luxon Purple. Now, in this previous step, we ended up using the contrast medium because I did want it to be smooth and uniform across the whole thing. But in this step, at the direction of Tunken Rhodes, I'm actually going to use water to thin it. And so what's going to happen is the contrast paint that's on there is going to have a certain stickiness to it. And so it is going to allow this water to flow across it in a particular way. And so this, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of that blue in here. that should give me the kind of easy transition that I'm looking for. I'm just really going to load this up with water here. I want to make it very, very thin. Very, very thin. I'm still adding more water in here. That's about 7 or 8 brushes. And so I'm going to come in. I'm going to come into these deepest folds here. Add this very, very thin purple. Then I'm just going to, before it dries, I'm going to pull this out here and spread it just a bit here. I'm going to come into this fold and do the same thing. Then I'm going to come that out, get some of my water, and bring this in. So you can see we're getting these very nice purple elements here that are in the deep folds of the cloak. And you might be wondering to yourself, what is he going to do with this toothpick that's down here? Well, you won't be able to see this toothpick whenever this model is completely put together. And so because of that, I'm not worried about that at all. This toothpick will be hidden. So that's another reason we're not going to spend a ton of time in this fold right here. But what I'm doing is just picking up some of this so it's not too crazy down in there. And I want to make sure that it doesn't completely dry before I get a chance to smooth it down with some additional water. Oh, same thing in here. I'm going to grab that, wipe the brush out, take some water here, and I'm going to smooth this transition using the water. And so this is working just like you probably saw it on on Duncan Rhodes's program here. And so I just really like the way his turned out. I thought it really gave this kind of an otherworldly appearance, and that's really what I wanted for this model. This water just allows us to kind of smooth down and remove any of those kind of water staining effects that are occurring and get a nice, very smooth transition. Alright, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go ahead and pick up some more of our purple here. That was basically all of it. So I'm going to go with 3 brushes this time, and then quite a bit of water. I'm just going to add water until maybe 10, 11, 12 brushes worth, something like that, so that it's very, very thin. I'm going to mix it in here. I'm going to grab just a tad of this blue and bring it in as well. And that's just going to help me get this transition so that it's not so abrupt. Right, we're going to bring this purple into here. Bring this purple into here. And the same for over here. We're going to come in with this purple. Before it dries, I'm going to take some water here. And I'm going to spread this out and fuzz the edge here, so that we have a nice, easy transition. You're not going to see most of this in this back area, but I still want it to look pretty good, because whatever it is you do see will be right on the front of the model. I'm going to come in here and just fuzz all of that, so we have quite a bit of purple down in these recesses. Just clean up this. I'm making sure wherever it's pooling down here, it makes sense to pool. Have some purple down here. And just clean that up. Should be some in these recesses as well. So what I'm doing is I'm just coming in here with additional water. I'm cleaning up these transitions by fuzzing the edge here where it's coming in, just with some additional water. That way you don't see this very sharp transition, but you get a very smooth transition. And it has an almost iridescent quality to it because of it. Same thing in here. Should be able to just take care of that. There we go. I saw a little bit of sharpness to that. Same thing, remove some of this. Some of that. Being very careful not to do too much or you'll create a water spot, a coffee stain. I'm just deepening this wherever I see the need. Wherever I think it would look nice to have just a little more of this purple. Without overdoing it. Alright, and so now we have a pretty wild looking transition throughout this model. I am going to go ahead and dry this out now and keep going. Oh, my apologies. Let me go ahead and mute you. Alright, so here we are. Now we have our cape that was spray painted in a plate mail by Vallejo. It's very similar to Late Leadbelcher. It's a kind of medium metallic color, silver color. And then from there, we mixed together our Aldari Emerald and Frostheart. We thinned that down with contrast medium and gave that a good, a thorough, I should say, coverage on the whole thing. Then we came back to it, and in the recesses, we brought in our purple here, which was our Luxon Purple contrast paint. And for this, we didn't use medium, but we used water. That way we could come in and fuzz the edges. So, being pretty happy with the way this looks, I'm now going to come in with our plate mail metallic, and I'm going to add a little bit of this original color back to it, so that you'll really see the transition in these folds here, and it won't just be all over. So this is actually going to enhance what we have. So I'm going to take this in here. I'm going to have just a little bit of a moist brush. I'm going to come in here. I touched one of the moist areas on this. And then I'm going to come in here with a little bit of a dry brush. And I'm going to just be hitting these spots that are higher. And so I'm going to go with it here. Leaving my recesses alone, but coming into here and slowly building up this color again. So this is, again, kind of one of the things that this brush is okay at, which is dry brushing out. So we're going to do that. We're going to come in here and we're going to dry brush down on these higher areas, hoping to transfer most right here. I'm going to come in and I don't want this to pop off of the plinth the way I have it. So I'm going to come in and just kind of hold that in place as I dry brush here over this kind of larger area. Now this is a flat area, so it's a little scary to be dry brushing here. It's possible if you don't have the mix of the paints correct, you'll end up kind of leaving a large splotch, which is difficult to deal with. But here you can see I'm just going to slowly build this color up and then slowly help this transition go over. The same is true of this right here. So I'm just going to come in here and kind of build up along this line. And so the paint that we're using right now is the Army Painter Metallic Plate Mail. And so I'm just going to come in and do the same across the entirety of the cloak, looking for these high spots to bring back up with the shine. It of course will catch these areas here that have these little bits of shiny pieces. And we're going to catch this top area as well. Trying mostly to stick to these spots that are higher. Want to leave all of our good recess shading in from our contrast paints. Same here. I'm just going to be very careful to keep following this line here. And now we're going to come to the inside and do the same thing. It's just going to bring out some of these areas here. I'm going to be sticking to these high spots. And these spots right here. Just going to pull all of that in, leaving our nice recess shading. Alright, so this is a little haphazard looking back here. So we're going to come in and smooth this out just a bit so that we have a little bit more of a transition here from these spots. Just really picking out the high spots and leaving all of our nice contrast down. Now I can see kind of my brush strokes right in here, so I'm going to kind of fuzz this. I'm just going to use a swirling motion to get rid of those brush strokes so that it kind of just fades into itself. And that was because I was pulling one direction. And in this case, it's better. It's good when you're establishing the line from it, but once you've established what it is, to fuzz the edge, you'll have to make a circular motion. And the same was true right here. Alright, you can see this is looking pretty crazy. We have all these kind of contrast paint colors that are coming through on one side, but then we have these metallics that are shining through as well, so you have this really kind of iridescent look of blues and purples. And so we're going to build this highlight up even more. We're going to come in with some Vallejo Shining Silver, and we're going to continue what we started here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this. This is actually very, very shiny paint. Not as crazy as like liquid chrome, but this is very, very shiny. So we're going to come in and we're going to just have this on the very top level. So I'm going to just go right in here, pull that, give this just the very tip here. We're going to come in just in here. Same thing, just aiming for these lines of the most highest bits here. This is the top area of the cloak, so it'll definitely be shiny through there. Catch this as well. I'm going to catch inside here. You won't be able to see much of this, but where you do, it'll be very shiny. I'm just going to fuzz this transition here. Make sure it blends. that is looking quite good. Now we have these sections here that are these like kind of little spotted areas. And what I'd like to do is add a little bit of white to that, and then we're going to come in with some of our Tezzeret glow. And I'm not going to do that everywhere. I'm just going to do that on some of the places. But I'm going to dry this metallic paint right now. That way we don't spread the metallic paint around. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you so I can pull out the blow dryer. All right, that was applied in some very thin layers, so it's going to dry very, very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and work my brush out here. I'm going to put this down, and then I'm going to get some white on my palette. So just for safety reasons, I'm going to mark these two areas right here. So it's very difficult, if you look at my palette right here, it's very difficult to see which one of these cells actually has anything in it. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these like this. This way, when I just come over and I'm talking to you guys, I can actually note that those two are circled, and they do in fact have a metallic paint in it, because you can accidentally come over here and grab the wrong thing very easily. All right, I'm going to put you back here so you can see what's going on. And now I am going to put some of this white paint on my palette. I just wanted to note that I was marking up my palette in this way so that I wouldn't make any mistakes. At least not that mistake. Alright, so let's grab some of our white paint here. There's enough moisture in the brush for this. Just going to double check it here. It looks like I don't see any additional metallics in this, so that's fine. So I'm going to come here. Alright, I don't see any brush strokes in that. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to give this spot and this spot. We'll come right in here for this. You'll be able to see some of this right there. So we'll give that as well. I can see on this spot. I'm just going to come in here. Add that in. This spot should be okay. We're going to just get this a little bit brighter with a little more white. Same thing here. Just going to strengthen these two spots and this spot. And then there's one rather large spot on the back here that we're also going to give this effect to. And let's hit right here. Just going to blend this in so that it kind of is this fuzzy area. Most of this is just making pretty smooth transitions for your paint here. This spot's, there we go. It didn't really want to work with me here, but now we are. So these are hitting some of the bigger spots here that have this little effect going on, this little bumpy pattern. All right, and so those are the spots that are going to pick up our Tezzeret glow. So I'm going to give this a shake. I'm going to get some of this on my palette. Don't need a ton here. There's not a whole lot to be done. I'm going to wipe off my excess, grab a little, and then I'm going to come in here with this and just blend this as I can along that. Get a little bit. I'm going to kind of push this in. So that white was put on very, very thinly, so I'm not terribly worried about it tearing or doing anything like that. It of course could, so I'm being a little careful here as I go. And I'm just kind of pushing that there. Same thing here. And this is just nice and gentle. Pushing this in the very center of this, we'll add a tad bit more. And you can see that white really helps here. It really grabs it. Makes it very striking. Yeah, I know cat. The cat is wanting to get in on the action here. And there isn't really any white there, but I'm going to have this as just the idea that it kind of goes down a little bit. Get most of that out. There we go. So then we have these spots on the cloak that have this effect on them. We're just going to blend as we go. Same thing here, we're just blending these together. I don't want any kind of hard transitions on this cloak, so that's why I missed a little bit right here where we're got that going. There we are. So now we have all of these effects going on the cloak, which is excellent here. Now, we do have these attachment points. And for these attachment points, they're going to be the same gold that is on the rest of the model. So for that, we're actually going to come back to our Rhinox hide, our Steel Legion drab, our Dorn yellow, and our flash glitz. We're not going to go super crazy with this. There's no real reason to here. This is just the little bits of pieces that are left. And so we just want to make sure that it matches what we have. So I'm going to go ahead, grab a little bit of our Rhinox hide here. And this is nothing particularly new. You folks have seen this before, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to give these little bits the Rhinox hide here, the little connectors that connect everything. And we're just gonna get that on there. Now these balls are actually going to be painted white and they're going to have a glow effect put on them. Yep, and they're only along the outside here. So, and there's 4 of them. Alright, so this brush, of course, not super great, but we're doing our best here to get this exactly where we need it. Now this was base coated here, so I will have to use, it's a lot of paint is what I'm getting at, so we'll have to use the hairdryer, which I'm going to do right now. Alright, now that that is dry, we're going to come in with some Steel Legion drab. So we're going to grab up a little bit of that. I'm going to put it in the next cell. We don't need a ton. This is going to be dry brushed on. I'm going to get most of that off, and then we're going to come in and just come across, and that should pick up some of that writing right there. Grab a little bit of that. have those on, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to mute you up real quick, pull out the hairdryer. All right. Now we're going to take the next part, which is Dorn Yellow. And we're going to bring this over to the palette. We aren't terribly worried about this one either. This is going to be dry brushed on. So, cleaned out our brush there. We're going to pick some of this up. And we're just going to dry brush that in. Now these are very, very small parts that we're working with right here. And they want to move quite a bit. It's very difficult to stabilize all of that there. But here we are. Alright, we'll wash this out. Alright, and then for our gold, we're going to come back with our flash glitz. And that's going to give us a nice yellow gold on top of this pale color. This will also just be layered in via dry brushing. You can see how much golden, more golden that is there right there. Alright, so we're going to come in, and then all of a sudden this is going to be gold. As you can see right there, it's this nice gold color. Alright, and there we are. We have our clasps in place. Now, these balls are going to actually be painted white and have a glow effect put on them. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to grab some of my white, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint these. I'm going to paint the whole thing, although I do realize there is kind of a holder around it. In this case, this brush is just not capable of painting that. Not really. And so I would rather have the whole effect than not really any, than to just pass. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and paint the whole thing white, holder and all. And then what's going to happen is, for the most part, this is actually just going to read like the whole thing is a ball here, since that's the way I painted it. And just coming in, this is going to be, there's going to be at least 2-3 coats maybe on these, because you have to build up weight, especially when it's on something that is not itself weight. Alright, there are balls here painted, these little balls at the top of the clasp. I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to go ahead and dry these out so I can keep going with the layers. Alright, so I'm going to come back in with just the same white. We're just going to put another, I need to clean this brush out. There we go, I could feel it starting to seize up on me there. Alright, try again here, there we are. So we're going to come in, we're going to strengthen this white. I am touching the cloak where I have already painted, but I am being very careful not to scratch it, like say with my fingernail. That would be unfortunate. After all the good work that we now have on this, I'm going to strengthen this as well. So I've done one side, now we're going to do the other. Make sure I get all the way around. Same here, make sure I get all the way around. And make sure I get all the way around. We're going to come under this, and there we are. right. So I'm going to mute you one more time, and then that's going to be it for putting on the white paint, and then we're going to go ahead, put on our Tesseract Glow, and give these a final speculative highlight. Again, that's very, very little paint, so I'm not too worried about that drying on time. I'm going to grab some of our Tesseract Glow here. Don't need to grab a ton. This is not a whole lot of area that we're going to be covering, but I'm going to go ahead and come in here, paint the tops of each of these. These are going to be the pieces that are attaching this cloak to Cesaric. And so I don't really have to be terribly worried about the inside of these, but since I don't really know exactly where it's going to connect, we're going to go ahead and just do it fully. That way we don't have any regrets when we're trying to figure out where exactly this stuff is going to go. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and mute you one more time, dry this, and we'll put in a speculative highlight. Alright, and for a speculative highlight, we're just going to grab some white here on the very tip of our brush. I'm going to brace here, and I'm going to touch just the outer edge of each of these and give it a little speculative highlight. So this is where, on like a round ball, you would have that white little circle or little square that sometimes appears depending on the shape of the object whenever you're looking at the light reflecting off of the object. So it's supposed to be that these are shiny. And now for the final effect on here, I'm actually going to use one more thing, but this is not the brush here. We'll see if I can grab it here. Ah, here it is. All right. So this is not the makeup brush, but it is a Molotow pen. And so this Molotow pen, I'm going to say it falls into the same category of when I was using the tool to put the basing medium on. There's just no other way to do this. This doesn't really exist outside of this, but this is Molotow liquid chrome. And so this truly is a chrome appearance. You can see here on some of that, it really just looks like straight metal. And so what I want to do is come in here, and I want to put this metal effect on some of these dots so that I have a true chrome effect on some of them. This is simply not doable with really any other tool, but I really wanted to have this effect on this cloak, so we're going to go ahead and add it in. Again, I'm not quite doing all of them, but I am doing many of them. Then just to get it to flow, sometimes you have to press it out like that. And you can see this very much has a nice effect here. It really brings out any of these darker spots here, especially against the spots that are still purple and blue. Again, we're not hitting all of these spots. We're just hitting a few of them. But this gives you just a very nice effect that you really can't get any other way. This Molotow pen is the only one I've ever seen that has this liquid chrome, that is truly liquid chrome. I'm going to be careful where I'm bracing my hand here, because I don't want to pick up liquid chrome and then touch it somewhere else to the model where I don't want it. And we're just coming in and touching the raised spots here. It's as simple as that. We've done so much with our makeup brush on this. I'm going to add a little bit here to this edge after I get it to flow. There we go. We're going to have it flow in here too, along this edge. And this is just that final, very eye-catching highlight that we're going to have on it. I'm going to hit a few more of these. Come along the back here, catch in here. You do have to be careful with this though. Once it is someplace, it's really not removable per se. All right. And there we are. A little bit more of that in here, just so it is consistent there. Alright, and forget these little bits down here. Alright, so there we have it. The Silent King's cloak is now finished. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you one more time. I'm going to dry this chrome so I don't make a mess of things. And then we're going to put it on him and he will find his place on the throne. Alright, so I'm going to move these paints out of the way. And let's go ahead and get our throne. You can see that it has been finished here. I'm going to go ahead and move you here so you can see what's going on. I'm going to pop this off right there. And again, I'm not worried about this. You're not going to see it. It's very far down into the throne. This gives you an idea about what this will look like when it's fully mounted on there. It just kind of sits, and then Cesaric comes here and he will be standing with his cloak on at these attachment points for him. There we are. So now he's kind of nestled in there. Excellent. And that is that. Let's go ahead and make sure his feet are touching the ground. This requires just a little bit of finagling to get all of the points to connect. While we're at it here, let's go ahead and check our reference to see exactly where that falls. It falls there, so he needs to turn just a little bit. There we go. So he should have a little bit further. So he's touching here and here, and he's touching here. So now He's really nestled against the cloak there. All right, and we're going to use a little bit of super glue here, which I'm going to reuse our toothpick. So this is what I do when I want just a very, very small amount of super glue places. I'm going to put some super glue on my palette here, right in the middle where I can see it. And then I'm going to grab it up here with my toothpick. So I've noted the connection points here. So I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to put this here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom of each foot here to keep him where he belongs. I'm not going to put glue anywhere else. So he will ultimately be holding his cloak in place, and the cloak will be held against him by those two connection points there. He must have his feet on the ground, though. He needs to turn just a little bit, and so this is just these final finaglings. Almost. All right. Connect there, connect there. All right. And with that, I believe I am happy with how he has turned out. Let me grab his veneers, and you can see the final effect. And there we are. And that is the Silent King, painted entirely with a dollar store brush. Well, thank you folks for joining me on this journey. I appreciate all of you being here while I was working. I appreciate the questions, the subscribes. All of that means a lot. And I will bring something new to you after the new year. So thank you all for watching. Have a great night. I will see you here next time.